everyone, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons. I'm your host, and I'm glad you're tuning in to see what's going on in and around Manchester. Summer's apparently back. My dad will always say he just blames February. February has everything all screwed up. Summer was in the spring, summer's in the fall, fall was in the summer. Whatever it is, it's damn hot out there. Last week there was a bunch of fun events in Manchester, and this week I thought I'd talk about some upcoming events just because I have a guest and I don't want to run out of time at the end. First and foremost, this weekend is the Deerfield Fair. I realize that's not in Manchester, but it is one of the best fairs in the state. So if you've never been to the Deerfield Fair, or if you have been to the Deerfield Fair, please take an evening or a daytime and get out there and pet the animals, have some really bad food that you shouldn't probably eat, go on some rides that you shouldn't probably go on. The Deerfield Fair. Come on down to the Deerfield Fair. Anyways, that's my non-Manchester item. I also want to tell people about some upcoming events. Some of them are political, some of them are just community items. This coming Monday, October 2nd, is the Manchester GOP's Manchester GOP's monthly meeting. It's at Murphy's Tap Room at 6 o'clock. That's on Monday, October 2nd. Obviously, that's free and open to anybody who's Republican or Republican-minded. Myself, as a candidate, Tammy Simmons, for Alderman in Ward 10, I'm hosting Coffee with Constituents at the McDonald's on 2nd Street. I'll be there Tuesday morning, October 3rd, from 7:30 to 8:30. If you live in my ward and you have a question for me, this is a good chance for you to come out and just say, hey, what do you think about this? Otherwise, you have to wait for me to come knocking on your door. So that's McDonald's on 2nd Street, 7:30 to 8:30, Tuesday, October 3rd. On Sunday, October 8th, in town Manchester is hosting Fire in Fall's Chili and Music Festival. I'm assuming this was a spin-off of when we had the Chili Fest a few years back. It's usually a great event. This is put on by in town Manchester. It'll be at Veterans Park this coming Sunday, the 8th. You can get more information at intownmanchester.com. Next Tuesday night, For a Better Manchester PAC. They are a new group that Lisa Gravel was on my show last week. For a Better Manchester PAC is having a candidate meet and greet fundraiser at the farm on Tuesday the 10th at 6 p.m. I do not believe there's a charge to get in. I think they're just looking for people to make donations and have an opportunity to meet some great candidates here in Manchester. Then we have on Tuesday the 17th, I realize it's a couple weeks out, but you want to get your tickets now, where the Manchester Republican Committee is hosting Business Over Breakfast with Governor Chris Stewart. That'll be held at Theo's Restaurant Tuesday the 17th at 7:30 in the morning. It's just $25 a person, and proceeds go to benefit great candidates here in Manchester in the November election. And lastly, a few weeks out, but you can buy your tickets now, there's an event up at the Brookside Congregational Church up in Ward 1. It's the Empty Bowls 2017. It's a great event. It's on Sunday the 22nd. It's $25. It benefits New Horizons. For $25, you get a handcrafted pottery bowl made by a local artisan, and obviously soups and things like that. So that is something I'm hoping to get to. And those are some great events coming up in the next week or so, and I hope I maybe see you at some of them. And then, now back to things. I don't really have anything to gripe about other than that it's hot out. So I think I'll just go right to my guest. As I've told you before, between now and Election Day, I want to get as many of the candidates in front of you as I can so that you can learn a little bit more about the people that you should be getting out and voting for. And joining me today is Chris Stewart, and Chris Stewart is running for alderman in Ward 1. Welcome.
Tammy, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I am too. I'm glad you're here, because then otherwise I just have to ramble for 30 minutes. So now you're a former school board member.
I am.
Correct?
I served 2 terms on Ward 3 school board a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Let me back up. I moved to Manchester in 2005.
Okay.
My wife moved here in 1999. We're both from Vermont originally, where our parents still live. I moved here. I met my wife, and we got married in 2010. And started having children, and we were living downtown. We were in Ward 3. I was on the school board. I loved it. But when we suddenly had 3 children, all under the age of 3, I had twin girls and a boy, we decided that we needed more space and some lawn and some green space. And staying in Manchester was a no-brainer. And so we moved to Ward 1, bought a house and moved to Ward 1. And now I'm running for alderman in Ward 1.
So, completely different world than my world. I live in West Manchester in Ward 10.
Yep.
People tend to think of Ward 1 as more upscale, higher income. I don't think that's the whole ward. I think there's a section of Ward 1 that might be the higher end, but then that can be said about half the city. I mean, every ward, well, not every ward, but most of the wards probably have an upper end. But when you're out talking to voters, I'm just curious if what comes up the most on your experience.
So I announced that I was running last July. We had the primary last Tuesday, as you just mentioned to your viewers. In the last 2 months, I've knocked on over 1,500 doors in Ward 1 and talked to several hundred people. And the issues in Ward 1, I think, tend to be a lot of the same issues that you find around the city. But in Ward 1, a big one, obviously, is the schools and making sure that the schools tend to do a better job at educating our kids in the 21st century. Also, the tax cap and taxes and what's going to happen
Seems to be every ward.
A very common theme. And then also, people really seem very interested in bringing some real changes to the aldermanic board and the school board. They want to see some new faces and some fresh ideas, and that's what I'm running on.
Okay. I agree. I think I keep saying I don't think taxes are a partisan issue by any means. I think Republicans, undeclared, Democrats, Libertarians, whatever, everybody is concerned when their tax bill goes up.
I think that that's true, and I think that people across the political spectrum all want to know that their tax dollars are being spent wisely and appropriately.
Well, that's what I keep saying to people. It's easy for me to just say, well, I'm not going to raise your taxes. But that isn't really what the problem is. Even myself, I'm a big proponent of the tax cap. I don't want anybody to have to pay more taxes than they should. But I do realize that we have things we have to pay for. I just want to make sure that every dollar we squeeze out of the taxpayers is spent well and spent wisely.
Yep.
And I'm never convinced that there isn't more room for savings.
Well, I think that there definitely is, and one of the things that I've spent a lot of time talking about is the Yager-Decker salary and benefit system that city employees currently use. And this was a system that was, by my understanding, was set up in the late 1990s. It was supposed to be reviewed every year or every other year. It's never been reviewed, and it's just reached a point now where it's a completely unsustainable mechanism that's in place. It's really causing a lot of trouble for both our school budgets and our city budgets. And one of the things I'm focused on trying to do is, with the help of everybody involved, both the unions and the taxpayers and city employees, but all coming down and sitting at a table and trying to find a common understanding about what we're going to do to change things to move forward in a positive way.
That's true. I know I talked to Mayor Wazorek, and he was the mayor when Yager-Decker was put in place, and he said actually it was set, well, he told me, and I'm not debating what you said, he said it was meant to be a merit raise for 3 to 5% of our employees. It was meant to be here's the bonus for those those few people who went above and beyond and did an amazing job. Here's your little extra, and within years it just became an across the board increase. And
Yes.
That'd be great if we were just rolling in the money, but when people are struggling to pay their tax bills, we have to balance, needs and wants, and I'm not anti-city worker. I'm not actually anti-union. I don't think anybody should be forced to join a union, but I don't think, I get why unions exist. But when they come to negotiate, I'm not really sure what the taxpayer side is actually negotiating for. We don't ever seem to get anything in return for things. We just keep giving more and more and more, whether we can afford it or not.
Right.
And I don't really personally, I don't like the disparity between one union group and another. Why should this group of city employees get the 8% raise, and why should this group of city employees not get any raise? And then this other group gets a different percentage. Maybe we should be looking at what the city can afford, what can happen within the cap, and then how we could disperse that.
I think that what I am advocating for is that all sides sit down in a quiet place, come together, and talk about what we're going to do to move the city forward.
I agree.
And
we have to have a plan. It's not something that I think obviously we can't fix any of this in 1 year.
Correct.
Contracts extend for whatever period of time.
Yep.
I have big concerns about public pensions, but I also get that's not an easy answer. Everybody says, well, just stop. Well, you can't just stop, because there's people who've been promised things.
Right.
And
in Manchester, it strikes me that this is a community. If we want to be a place where young, upwardly mobile families want to move to and want to live in, that we need a public school system that should be second to none in the state of New Hampshire. And certainly as a dad who has a son that's about to start at Webster School next year, and my twin girls will be a year after that, I am focused like a laser on making sure that the school district does a better job of educating our kids. That is not to say that there are not wonderful teachers who are doing an outstanding job in our classrooms. There certainly are. There's a lot of kids that are graduating from high school in Manchester and going on to top universities across the country. But it is also true that district-wide, over the last 15 or so years, we have poured money into the education system, and our dropout rates continue to go up, our literacy rates continue to go down.
And I think that's what the taxpayer feels, is that we keep spending more and more money, and nobody's seeing any significant, I mean, there might be changes, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, they don't ever fix anything. I do think the new superintendent is doing a great job. I think sometimes that's what it takes. It takes a little bit of a shake-up. You start
I've talked
with different ideas.
I've talked to a lot of my friends who are still on the school board, and most of them seem to think that he's doing a very good job and are optimistic about the direction that he's taking the school district. So that's a good thing.
Good, because that's more than 50% of our tax bill every year.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to make sure it's done well.
Yes, it is.
So, speaking of school board and alderman thing, one of the big things that comes up that I hear a lot is people are amazed that school board and aldermen are able to get health insurance benefits through the city, even though they're not city employees. If that was brought to a vote, or how would you bring it to a vote? Because I think we both would think that we both probably know what the best answer is. What do you think about should we look at whether or not we should be offering this?
I think we should absolutely, when we have budgets that are in as much distress as ours currently are, I think we should be absolutely looking at everything. I wholly support putting the question of whether or not Board of Mayor and Aldermen and school board members should get taxpayer-funded benefits. That should absolutely be a ballot question, and I would absolutely support putting that on the ballot to let
I think
let
that's
the
the best
voters.
thing. I think if, just like with the tax cap, I think there are things that the voters make a decision on, and that's it. And I don't even know what the result was when we put the question of the mayor's salary. That gets put before the voters. If they think he's making enough money, or she, or whoever it is, then that's what the voters said.
I actually am a big fan of ballot questions. I think
I think even if they're not binding, I think they're still worth it. Like they're doing one on the flag. I think personally that's silly. They're doing a question. It's going to probably cost money because they have to print it in color, and I don't really know if that's good use of our tax dollars. And I don't know that a very large percentage of people in the city actually really care about the city flag. But that's a non-binding question, but at least the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and maybe it'll be us that'll be making the decision on it come January.
Yes.
But
totally support it. Keno's going to be on the ballot, and so it's having ballot questions is a good way to answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. I think we're both in the same thing. I would like to put the question of health insurance.
Yep.
I also think it should be the information regarding these things should be more readily available. I put in a right to know request actually a few weeks ago to find out which aldermen and which school committee members were getting insurance and we're self-funded, so I don't want to know what we've spent on a family's insurance, but I want to know what the average policy is. And we're talking probably at least 2 weeks. I haven't heard peep. Not one peep. And I shouldn't have to hunt it down. It should kind of just be on the website somewhere.
I agree with you on that. Look, when I was on the school board, this question came up. People, it might have been Rich Gerard, or it might have been the union leader, or it might have been another news organization, but people wanted to know who was taking health care on the board. And it always struck me as one of those things, well, of course you should know who's taking health care on the board.
And I actually think, and somebody will come back and say, well, we already do that, but if they do, I don't know where it is. And if I don't know where it is, I'm going to guess most of my neighbors don't know where it is.
Right.
I actually would love to be able to see where Manchester spends its money. Like, I can look at the budget. The average taxpayer can look at the budget, and you can kind of get an idea. But I don't think people really can see. I should be able to go in. People should be able to go in and put my name in the city and see if they paid me any money.
Right.
Or paid you any. And if we did, for what? Because I think when there's questions of, conflicts or whatnot, or it can exonerate somebody, or maybe it does seem a little fishy that this one person, why does this person keep getting paid by the city? I'm all about transparency. There's no harm in knowing exactly who gets paid what from the taxpayers. 'Cause it's from the taxpayers.
Absolutely agree. It's taxpayer money. It should be fully
And
transparent.
it can't be that hard. I mean, it's technology. It's 2017. How hard could it be?
Right.
I'm pretty sure I could get my Dan on it. He can fix it. So let's see. So we talked about that. What about the city charter? What about conflicts of interest?
So, conflicts of interest. I do not have any family members that work for the city of Manchester.
Good.
So I should not have any conflicts of interest on that. If you're referring to the firefighters contract that came up a couple weeks ago, I frankly personally believed it was wrong of Alderman
Ludwig
and Gamache to vote for those contracts, having family members that benefited directly from those contracts. For me, it always seemed a little bit silly to get into a discussion about the charter, because to me personally that would be something that I would never do, regardless of what the charter
Right.
said.
I didn't think I needed it to be spelled out. I thought conflict of interest was a relatively
straightforward thing, and I would never vote on contracts. I would never dream of voting for contracts that directly benefited myself or my family. As to the city charter, I have seen a lot of it. I've read it actually, and I've obviously seen a lot of it in the newspaper over the last couple of weeks. And is the city charter unclear on some things? It probably is. And so going back and taking another look at that is always a good thing. But to be crystal clear, no, I would have never voted for those contracts. I think it was wrong that they did, and I would never vote on contracts that directly benefited myself or my family member.
Yeah, I there was two issues at hand in there as far as I was concerned. I was one of the people who signed Lisa Gravel's petition or complaint, because first, they should know better. I just think that's common sense. And then to watch the alderman try to, massage the issue as if it wasn't a concern, and they don't really know what the intent of the charter was and all these questions, when the charter actually even says if there is a question, they should send it to the conduct board to do the investigation. So even if I didn't think that they violated the charter, because at least there were at least two complaints, if you count the people, there was 129 complaints. If somebody's concerned that the charter may have been violated, and I do think the appropriate course of action would probably be to say, well, then let's send it over to the conduct board. So, I don't know. So let's see. I'm trying to think of what other alderman candidates tell me. So Elizabeth Moreau over in Ward 6, when I asked her what her constituents were talking to her about, she talked about overgrowth, which surprised me. I was like, overgrowth? She said people in Ward 6 are really concerned that the sidewalks are all covered with weeds, which on the west side I'm very concerned about, but I assumed that it was just the west side.
I also definitely hear about that in Ward 1 too. Look, the graffiti, the aggressive panhandling, the parks aren't being taken as care of as they should be. The cemeteries, it's the same thing. Manchester just needs a fresh look at the way that city government does business. I think
we need a go team attitude for a little while, because I talk to a lot of people, when we're doing different interviews with different candidates and whatnot. The communication method between the residents in the city, or the city and the residents, or the city and the city, or the alderman, it just seems like nobody really does a very good job communicating. The only alerts, and there's probably a way to sign up for more, the only alerts I ever get from the city is when there's a snow emergency, which doesn't even impact me. But, when there's going to be something important going on in the ward, I would think that at least my alderman should at least be trying to communicate to his constituents what's going on. And if there's going to be an important vote on whatever, I think people should know ahead of time, not read about it in the Union Leader the next day.
I absolutely agree with that. Look, one of the things that I've pledged to bring back that previous aldermen, not the current Ward 1 alderman, Kevin Kavanaugh, but previous aldermen have done, was they've hosted monthly meet and greet meetings at Webster School. And I am committed to that. I think that's a wonderful idea. And, it'll just be a regular Wednesday a month. And I'll go down to the school, and we'll throw out a couple chairs, and we'll all sit down, and people can fire questions at me for as long as they want to ask me whatever they want.
I said to somebody, I said, how else would I know if I'm representing my ward if I don't know what my ward cares? Just because I care about something doesn't mean the people in my ward care about it, and I'm sure there's things in my ward that I don't know about.
That's right. The reverse is true. That people will be focused on issues that you'll have no idea are going on, and only by talking with them and hearing what their concerns are will you be able to address them. Constituent service, I mean, there are a lot of big issues, obviously, but constituent service and helping take care of the people in your ward is probably
that's what I say.
the biggest.
Half of my theory is, I've got the tax situation, and then I want to build a better community. I just want to build a better community.
Right.
I chose Manchester the first time I bought a house here. We chose Manchester again this year when we bought a second house. I chose my ward twice. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. This is where these are my people.
That's me too. Look, I'm from southern Vermont. Please don't hold that against me.
That's okay, because I'm from upstate New York, so don't hold that against me.
But look, we're here too. My wife and I mean, our home that we live in is obviously our largest asset.
Yep.
We have a very modest condo on West Merrimack Street that we rent out to someone who's working down in the mill yard. And we have 3 children that were all born at Catholic Medical Center, and all 3 are going to be going to Webster School here in the next couple of years. We are all in on the city of Manchester.
Right, that's what I keep saying. I'm the Ward 10 girl. Like, I work in Ward 10. I live in Ward 10. My rental property's in Ward 10. That's it.
And we feel so lucky to be here, and there are so many great things going on in the city of Manchester right now. I mean, just wonderful things. Yep. We just need city government to do a better job and to catch up sort of where the rest of the city is at.
What do you think? What do you think the city could do? What's the easiest thing the city could do to try to attract more businesses here, or maybe just remove roadblocks to attracting more businesses?
So if you talk to in my opinion, if you talk to a lot of business owners in and around Manchester, what they'll tell you is that the permitting process isn't as uniform as it should be. That there are different rules for different players depending on who you are. And it's not necessarily like a corruption thing, but it's.
I think that there isn't I don't think there's a 10-point checklist.
There's definitely not.
And if there is, nobody knows what the 10-point checklist is.
That's right.
Until they're at checkpoint 7, and then they're like, oh, and we forgot to tell you about 9 and 10.
Most businesses want to move to a community. Once they've chosen a community they want to work in, they want to move to that community and be good members of that community. They just want to be known. They just want to know what the rules of the road are. So having very clear rules of the road for businesses to abide by when they move here, I think would do a great lot to help that. I also think, going back to the schools for a second, it is very true that you need a high-quality public education system, not only to attract young families, but also to attract businesses here. And so I think starting to get some more positive headlines out of our school district versus the negative headlines would also be helpful. But that's a longer...
Well, it's unfortunate when you think about it. If you talk to people who don't live in Manchester, who don't know what a wonderful place we happen to live, they think that, half the city's doing heroin and you have to walk over needles on the street, and that, we don't teach our kids how to read or something. I mean, that, there's this like doom and gloom perception of Manchester, and I'm like, I don't know. When I think of Manchester, I see this, and I think of kayaking and hiking and having all these things very convenient to where I live without having to get in my car and drive 20 minutes.
The city is awesome. It's an awesome.
I don't think
place.
People realize how much great outdoor space we have within our city limits.
Yep.
I mean, even just Livingston Park. You've got trails. You can kayak on the pond up there. You can ice skate. There's
everything. We have delicious restaurants.
We have amazing restaurants. Dan and I mean, nothing against the rest of Manchester, but I mean, Elm Street's about my barrier because I'm on the other side of the river. But we don't have to go someplace else to go out to dinner. I can even pretty much stay on the west side of Manchester and have great food. And then we've come over to Elm Street, and that's about it.
I have talked to several of my friends who live in Portsmouth, who live in Concord, and they are all very jealous of what we have going on from the restaurant scene here in Manchester.
I think we have room for growth, don't get me wrong. I love this idea of building up the waterfront.
Yep.
It is crazy that we have a river running through our city that has such a historical background, and the only thing on it right now is a parking lot.
I agree.
It's crazy.
Our good friend Cliff Hurst is working really hard at that.
So I know there's an event coming up,
weeks.
A couple Saturdays from now. I won't be able to do it because I'll be busy knocking on doors, but it's nice to see that type of thing. The bike share thing, that was a no-brainer.
It's awesome. Will Stewart gets huge credit for that. That was a wonderful
I was thinking about it today because I had a t-shirt on this morning. I had an Uber t-shirt. I don't drive for Uber, but I ride with Uber.
Yep.
I didn't understand the whole Uber debacle. Like, why get in the way? Just let people decide if they want to take Uber. Nobody's going to force you into an Uber car. I don't know. I don't think the city... I always go back to, I'm a small government kind of person. People might say I'm a libertarian. I'm really not. I'm just a small government Republican, fiscally conservative. I think that people need to be able to make their own choices in a lot more things than we think they do.
Yes.
I don't think the government needs to protect me from me. The government might...
Uber.
Or Uber.
Uber.
I think I could make that decision for myself. If I thought Uber was sketchy, I wouldn't get in a car. You couldn't pay me to take a cab in the city, though.
Well, the other thing is when you focus on silly things like the Uber fight, you are missing the boat on the more important stuff that you take your eye off the ball. And so...
Well, you read about it in this newspaper, the school board meetings. I mean... Okay, so I guess they talked about fans because apparently when Joyce Craig was on the school board, she voted to take the fans out of the classroom so we could save on electricity. And now the classrooms are 100 degrees. Great, that's really important stuff. And the bake sale thing. How many months we got? It was like this Pizzagate years ago.
We were talking about the bake sale stuff when I was on the school board 4 years ago.
You know, like it's a bake sale. Really, how many rules do we have to have for bake sales? How about we let the principal of the school manage their school?
I agree.
How about, I mean, do we really need 12 layers of supervision for bake sales in our schools?
I would argue not.
Right. I want to go back a little bit. You were talking about, I don't remember what you said, but I got to thinking about the attitude. We need a little bit different focus from the city. I get bothered because I think sometimes, and it's no fault of their own, I do think city employees sometimes forget that, like, they are the city government, and all of this stuff is really part of their job. I mean, I work for a company, I do purchasing and things like that, but if I walk by and there's trash on the floor, I don't just, it's not my job, I'm not picking up the trash. In a company, you pitch in and you do the things that need to get done. It's unfortunate because I think that's where we're lacking in, like, the parks or when there's trash on the streets. I mean, I think that's one of the worst things that can hurt an image of the city is the graffiti and trash along the side of the road. Someone's got to pick it up. We either need to organize private entities, to volunteer to clean up part of the city, or we need to push our city. Somehow, somebody's got to clean up. You can't just turn a blind eye and say, oh, it's not there.
Look, I totally agree with that. The fact remains is that collecting trash is a hugely important job that the city each and every day undertakes, and it like regular trash pickup should happen regularly, and then also the trash and all the stuff that you see strewn along the street, that should be picked up and disposed of. And is it obnoxious that a private citizen walks along and throws trash on the street? Yes, it is. That's an extremely obnoxious thing. But the fact is that the city should be responsible for picking that up and making sure that this is an attractive place for all of us to live.
I think it's a big.
You don't want people driving into our city and having
being
the first thing that they're hit with is an aggressive panhandler standing next to a pile of trash. That's not good for anybody.
So we're just about out of time. I'm going to give you 20, 30 seconds. Tell the people in Ward 1 that they should vote for you and where and when and how they can find out more about you.
So my name again is Chris Stewart. I'm running for alderman in Ward 1. I would very much like your support in the November election. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit www.stewartformanchester.com. Again, that's www.stewartformanchester.com. Or if you'd like to ask me a question directly, please call me on my cell phone, 603-391-9041. And Tammy, again, thank you very much for having us on.
I'm glad you came on. It was a great talk. For those of you watching, if you have any questions, if you missed Chris's information, if you want to find out more about an event that I mentioned, or you just want to send me a nasty email, that's fine too. You can email me at ManchTalk@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Facebook or on Twitter at ManchTalk. It's great to have so many people tuning in and contacting me. I hope you tell your friends to watch too. That's all we have for this week. Enjoy this hot, hot weather, and I bet next week we'll be back to fall. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.